Sometimes, a case can hang by a single fraying thread, suspended for years, even decades, in a state of agonizing uncertainty. Detectives exhaust every lead and hit one dead end after another. The guilty walk free, melting back into society, while the innocent are sometimes wrongly accused, their lives shattered by a crime they never committed. But what happens when one single, previously overlooked detail finally emerges from the shadows? What happens when a piece of evidence so powerful, so undeniable, comes to light that it unravels an entire web of lies? This is the story of the smoking guns that changed it all. Often, the only thing separating a stone-cold case from a conviction is that one irrefutable, game-changing clue. It might be a digital ghost, a phantom trail of data trapped within a machine, just waiting for the right eyes to find it. It could be an ordinary, everyday object that is, in fact, so unique it's practically one of a kind. Or it could be a microscopic fiber, invisible to the naked eye, that tells a gruesome story the killer was certain they had erased forever. Tonight, we're unmasking 3 killers who believed they had orchestrated the perfect crime, who basked in their own twisted genius, only to be taken down by that one pivotal, damning clue they left behind. For 30 long years, a terrifying shadow haunted the city of Wichita, Kansas. He gave himself a name, a calling card that would become synonymous with fear. BTK, a chillingly simple acronym for his brutal method: bind, torture, kill. Between 1974 and 1991, the BTK killer claimed the lives of 10 people, all while engaging in a sick, narcissistic game with police and the media. He sent letters, poems, and puzzles, reveling in the terror he created. He was a phantom, a meticulous and patient monster who left behind infuriatingly few clues and clearly savored the public's deepening fear. Then, in 1991, he went utterly silent. The letters stopped, the killings ceased. For 13 long years, the case grew cold, and the people of Wichita held their collective breath, wondering if the monster was gone for good or merely sleeping. But a killer's ego is a fragile and demanding thing. In 2004, the suffocating silence was broken. BTK resurfaced, apparently insulted that the world was beginning to forget his reign of terror. He began sending packages to local news stations, eager to restart his twisted game of cat and mouse. He sent taunting word puzzles, chilling mementos, and even the driver's license of one of his victims, a clear message that he was still out there. But this was a new era. The world had changed, and so had technology. And in his desperate, arrogant need for the spotlight, BTK was about to make a fatal mistake. He sent a strange message to a local Fox affiliate on a 3.5-inch floppy disk. In it, he posed a question that would ultimately seal his fate. He literally asked the police in writing if the data on a floppy disk could be traced back to its source. "Be honest," he wrote, a challenge dripping with hubris. Seeing a golden opportunity, the police took a calculated risk. They replied through a classified ad in the local paper, a carefully crafted message telling the killer that the disk was perfectly safe and untraceable. It was a lie, and the killer, blinded by his own ego, bought it completely, promptly sending the floppy disk to the station. That disk was the smoking gun. When forensic analysts received the disk, they knew it was their one shot. They looked far beyond the taunting message on its surface. They were looking for the ghost in the machine, hidden, deleted metadata, and they found it. Embedded in a deleted Word document were 2 crucial fragments of information: the name Dennis and a reference to Christ Lutheran Church. A quick, frantic search revealed that a man named Dennis Rader was the president of the church council. For the first time in 3 decades, investigators had more than a shadow. They had a name. From there, the dominoes fell with breathtaking speed. They secured a court order to test the DNA from a pap smear sample of Rader's daughter, which was on file at a university medical clinic. The lab results came back with a familial match to the DNA evidence that had been patiently waiting in a file, collected from one of the BTK murder scenes. On February 25, 2005, Dennis Rader, church council president, respected Boy Scout leader, an unassuming family man, was arrested. The digital ghost on that floppy disk had accomplished what 30 years of intense investigation could not. It gave the phantom a name, a face, and a very human identity, finally bringing one of America's most infamous and terrifying crime sprees to an end. Rader confessed in chilling detail and was sentenced to 10 consecutive life terms in prison. A digital clue is one thing, a mistake made in a world the killer didn't fully understand. But what happens when the key to unlocking a case is far more tangible, hiding in plain sight? Our next case takes us to the quiet community of Bellevue, Nebraska, in the early 1980s, a place that was about to be paralyzed by a new and deeply personal kind of fear. In September 1983, a 13-year-old paperboy named Danny Joe Eberly, a familiar face in his neighborhood, vanished without a trace while on his route. The disappearance of a child in broad daylight sent a shockwave of panic through the town. 3 days later, his body was found in a nearby field. The community's worst fears were realized. Just 2 months after that, another boy, 12-year-old Christopher Walden, was also abducted and killed. The town was terrified, held hostage by the knowledge that a predator was actively targeting their children. The FBI was called in to assist local law enforcement, but despite a massive investigation, the case quickly went cold. The investigation eventually began to zero in on a young airman stationed at the nearby Offutt Air Force Base, John Joubert. He seemed to fit the psychological profile of the killer, but there was no concrete evidence, nothing to directly tie him to the horrific murders. That is, until a local preschool teacher reported that a man had attempted to abduct one of her students. She bravely fought him off and, in a moment of incredible clarity and courage, she memorized his license plate number. The car was traced back to John Joubert. When police executed a search warrant on Joubert's barracks, they found the smoking gun. It wasn't a weapon dripping with blood or a piece of torn clothing. It was a simple length of rope. At first glance, it just looked like an ordinary piece of rope, something that could be found in any garage or tool shed. But a closer examination by the FBI lab revealed it was a highly distinctive, multi-stranded rope of Korean origin. It was a type that was incredibly rare in the United States, almost impossible to find. This was the exact same type of rope that had been used to bind Danny Eberly. When investigators searched Joubert's car and found even more of this identical, unique rope, they knew, with chilling certainty, that they had their man. Faced with this unique and damning piece of physical evidence, something he could not explain away, Joubert confessed to killing both boys. The rope, an object so ordinary in appearance yet so specific in its origin, became the unbreakable link between the sadistic killer and his innocent victims. The very thing he used to commit his terrible crimes became the tool of his own undoing, ensuring he would never harm another child again. Joubert was convicted of his crimes and was executed in 1996. Physical evidence can place a killer at a crime scene, tying them to a victim with undeniable certainty. But what if the evidence does more than that? What if it serves to prove that the supposed victim's story is nothing more than a complete and calculated lie? In the cold, early morning hours of February 17, 1970, military police at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, received a frantic, desperate phone call from an Army captain named Jeffrey McDonald, a Green Beret surgeon. He claimed that 4 drug-crazed hippies had broken into his home, chanting and attacking him, his pregnant wife Colette, and their 2 young daughters. When police arrived, they walked into a scene of unimaginable horror. Colette and the children were dead. McDonald, the sole survivor, had a collapsed lung and several other wounds. His story of a random, brutal home invasion, one that disturbingly echoed the recent Manson family murders, earned him the nation's sympathy and compassion. McDonald was a handsome, charismatic doctor, a decorated Green Beret. His story was utterly heartbreaking, but as forensic investigators began their meticulous, painstaking work at the scene, a very different and far more sinister narrative began to emerge. One written not in words, but in bloodstains and tiny, invisible fibers. The smoking gun in this case wasn't one single item, but rather a constellation of forensic clues that systematically tore McDonald's story apart. The most critical piece of evidence was his own pajama top. McDonald claimed he had used the torn blue garment to fend off his attackers during the life-or-death struggle. The top was riddled with 48 clean, ice pick-like puncture holes. In a moment of simple but brilliant investigative work, an analyst folded the pajama top in the exact way it would have been if it were lying bunched up on his wife's chest as she was being attacked. And just like that, the 48 separate holes aligned perfectly with the 21 stab wounds she had suffered. This powerfully suggested the top wasn't on him during a struggle at all. It was likely placed over his wife, perhaps to muffle her screams as he stabbed her through it. Even more damning, microscopic blue fibers from that very pajama top were found under his wife's fingernails and beneath the bodies of his daughters. But tellingly, not a single fiber from the top was found under MacDonald's own fingernails, which one would absolutely expect if he had been using it to fight for his life. The physical evidence didn't point to any outside intruders. It pointed directly and exclusively at Jeffrey MacDonald. The patterns of the bloodstains, the strange and suspicious tidiness of the scene, and the nature of the wounds all screamed that this was no chaotic, random home invasion. The fibers told a silent, horrible story of a domestic argument that had exploded into unimaginable violence. After years of protracted legal battles and appeals, Jeffrey MacDonald was convicted in 1979 for the murders of his wife and 2 daughters. He has maintained his innocence for over 50 years from behind bars, but his countless appeals have been repeatedly denied. A few tiny fibers, invisible to the naked eye, became the smoking gun that unmasked a killer hiding behind a hero's mask. A digital ghost on a floppy disk, a rare rope from halfway across the world, a damning pattern of microscopic fibers. 3 different killers, from 3 different walks of life, all utterly convinced they had gotten away with the perfect murder. But in the end, they were all brought to justice by one crucial piece of evidence: the smoking gun that spoke for the victims when they no longer could. What these cases show us is that the truth can be found in the smallest, most insignificant seeming details. They demonstrate the incredible power of diligent forensic science and sharp, intuitive police work to cut through the most convincing deceptions and deliver justice, no matter how much time has passed or how cold a case has become. What do you think is the most compelling type of smoking gun evidence? And what case with a shocking clue fascinates you the most? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to see more deep dives into cases where a single, overlooked clue unmasked the truth, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next investigation. Thanks for watching.